So the change were so visible that after a period of time, we see the Japan now, and most of the people also look forward to the Japanese principles in many ways for implementation. And we can apply this in our daily lives. So when we take an example of where we are now and where we want to be, the distance might seem very far. But if you take an incremental plan every day and achieve it, it's not just planning. That most of the times what happen is we take a lot of resolutions, but why does the resolutions stop in the middle, or why does our resolutions not get fulfilled? It's because we put the resolutions as goals. One of the way to look at it is, don't plan for a goal, but plans for something that to become your habit. So what will happen? So suppose, taking a simple example, which many of
Unable
us
to
try.
hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, now we are able to hear you.
I don't know what is the problem. So previously you were not able to hear anything?
No,
Just hear you, Abhi. When you started, we were able to hear.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what I was saying was, this case and principle, we can apply it in our daily lives. Every day, if we see that, like suppose we have a target of weight loss, or it can be a target of doing exercise. Suppose you want to do exercise 3 days a week. So don't keep it as your goal. Keep it as making it a habit. So when you work towards making a habit, your mind will not get stressed out much, because you planned to do 3 days a week. You did only 2 days. And what is the thing that you are trying to achieve is to become a habit. Your mind will not be disturbed too much. But when you put it as a goal, when you see that in terms of a result oriented action, then what is going to happen is, if you're not able to do it for the third day, your mind gets upset, because I planned it, I wanted to do it, I was not able to do it. So one way to look at it is, try to make your resolutions in terms of cultivating a habit, and not as looking them as goals. One of the way to follow is that. And second way is, every day you have to get up and plan for yourself a point of improvement. It could be like, if I start reading a book, I'll actually plan that every day at least 10 minutes I have to read a book. My plan is to complete the book in 1 month. That is my larger plan. But every day what I'll put is 10 minutes limit. Every day at least minimum I have to read 10 minutes. So by practicing at least 10 minutes reading a day, at the end of 1 month, even though I might not complete the whole book, but at least 75% I would have completed. Or if I had proper time, I would have completed. But every day I made an effort to achieve towards my larger picture of the goal, which is like a 1 month target. This could be applied in any walk of your life, and see this improvement every day, and see how your self-esteem boosts up when you start doing things on your own, little by little. And after a month, when you look back and see yourself, you will see you have walked a lot of steps. Every day walking might seem a baby step. Baby step, you will not recognize that you really walked a lot. But after 1 month, if you look back and see, you will feel like you yourself will give a pat on your back and say, wow, I did a lot. I improved a lot. Try out this and say me after a month what changes you see in your lives. Okay?
Okay.
Sure, Abhi.
Yeah, Abhita.
So let's go to the next verse. Naiva tasya krute nartah na krute neha kaschana na chasya sarva bhuteshu kaschidartavya pashrayah. So he continues, for him he again realized to the person who is the self-realized person, who sees the contentment within him and who is satisfied within him. Such a person, him refers to a self-realized person. There is no interest whatever here in what is done or what is not done, nor does he depend upon any being for any object. So when we look at this verse, it means that the person who is self-realized, as we said, he's really not interested. When we say interested, it doesn't mean that he doesn't connect with his work and do the work. But the interest here relates to the interest in deriving the happiness or interest in not deriving the happiness. So the work result oriented action is not run by him. What he does is acting for the sake of acting. And when the interest, when we say here, we need to clearly understand the interest is for the results and not for the action itself. So yoga as such defines as the union or becoming one, understanding the unity in the three different levels of physical, mental, and emotional. And also another way of looking at it, how can we achieve that, is to live consciously. So we live all the time, but whether it's consciously or subconsciously is what matters. If you lead your life consciously, that means you are a yogi. You need not do anything different or anything special. But if you are conscious at every moment, you are a yogi. And if you are unconsciously doing things, then you are just living and you are not making the life completely as what it has to be. So the question comes, does an enlightened person work? So technically, as we discussed, he doesn't work, which is the Vedantic view, but practically, yes, he works. They work for the benefit of the world. They have no interest in the results of the action. Whatever work comes to them, they work because they have the body to work, or they are it's their duty to work. So intelligent person has no gain or loss in doing anything because he is not attached to the results of the action. He is internally independent, meaning the happiness. He is happy by himself. So he is internally independent on deriving happiness from the outside objects. So this is a personality trait, and it is possible through internal training. So how we see that, how can a self-realized person be developed? So it is by developing the personality, by understanding all these kinds of wisdom, and we try to work towards it. Then it becomes our habit. When it becomes our habit, it can be seen in our personality. So whenever some habit, some work or some action becomes your habit, that habit slowly is visible in the personality of the way we interact with the world. So this is a personality trait, and which is possible to internal training. So this is a verse I found interesting. So it says, Sarvam Paravasham Dukkam, Sarvam Atmavasham Sukham, Etad Vidyat Samasena Lakshanam Sukha Dukkhayoho. So it says, there is pain everywhere for the dependent, and there is pleasure everywhere for the independent. So in short, these are the characteristics of the pleasure and the pain. So it again emphasizes on the independence and dependence. One, with regards to the internal environment of understanding what is the real source of happiness. And second, independence and dependence on the second layer to the results of the action. So if you are independent of the results of the action, you will not come into this dualities, because you do action for the sake of action. Whereas you are dependent on the results of action, that's when you experience the dualities. So Karma Yoga teaches us to achieve dynamic tranquility and tranquil dynamism. So it doesn't say us to just sit at the corner of the house or sit at any calm place and achieve the peace of mind. It gives us the logic, and it also gives us the ways as how we can transform every action into a spiritual action, and how being in the midst of noisy place, how we can try to get the peace of mind internally. That peace is only conditioned and chosen by you. So it doesn't matter how the external environment is. You can always choose to be at peace at your will. So when we see, most of the times what happens when we are too much addicted to action, we become rajasic. So we are very passionate. I want to do this. I want to achieve this. It could be in the good sense. It could be in the bad sense, but either good or bad, too much of addiction creates restlessness. That's why we call it as rajasic, because it creates restlessness of mind. Even to do good, I want to do good, I want to do good, I want to do good. If it disturbs your mental state, that means it is not something that is desirable to strike the peace against. Again, the second state is addiction to laziness, where you do not act at all. and you are very lazy, procrastinating things and not ready to do anything. So it is the tamasic state. So what we want through Karma Yoga is reduce your states of Rajasic and totally avoid the states of Tamasic. When you reduce the states of Rajasic, you will act, but still try to have your mind towards Sattva when you detach from the results of the action. And when you are not Tamasic, you will come into the Rajasic state. So from Tamas, we need to move to Rajas. That's when we start acting. From Tamas, you cannot directly move to Sattva. That doesn't work. So for a lazy person who is procrastinating, not doing anything, tamasic state of mind has to move to the rajasic state of mind. So once the mind is rajasic, it will be restless because of its nature, because how to do the actions. It gets attached. It gets sometimes indulged. To control that rajasic mind is when we have to apply all these things and act, because action is rajasic. Without action, you cannot do anything. So we have to act. Only sattva, rajas helps us to act. But when we act, how to have the mental state? We can have the mental state in sattvic by not getting attached to the results of the action. So by this, what is going to happen? If you take the analogy of the bliss that you have within you, the internal environment, or many times when we see the universal thing and the individual thing, we compare it with normally ocean and the water. So when we see the ocean of water and the river flows into the ocean, just because river is flowing into the ocean, does the level of the ocean increase or decrease? The ocean is totally a big body of water mass, and this water that is entering really doesn't make any kind of difference to the big mass of the body of ocean. In the same way, they are trying to compare it with the internal happiness and bliss that we are having within. So as Sachitananda Swarupa, if you are happy and if you are blissful, whatever happiness you get out from encountering the other things, like you feel that I did this, I'm very happy, even though that is own reflection of your happiness, at that point of time, it is like that happiness entering your ocean of divinity. So that is not going to alter your divinity or that blissful state that is within you. So that is the state of a self-realized person. He's not attached to the results of the action. So he's like the ocean, and whatever results of actions are like the water coming from the river water coming and merging into the ocean. And another example that we can take of how a self-realized person tends to be happy by himself is he understands the correct relationship with the world. In Vedanta, we say that it is the ignorance that makes us separate from the divinity or covers us from not allowing us to identify the divinity within us, because we are ignorant of understanding the true nature of who we are. This example, again, we talk many times about the dreamer and the waking state. So now suppose, for example, I'm dreaming. In my dream, I'm a doctor. There was a patient who was coming for a surgery. We made everything ready for the patient, and the patient is brought into the operation theater. I'm actually operating, and I started operation. Supposing that it's the heart transplant operation, it takes normally 6 hours or 7 hours to do it. So I was doing it in the midst of the operation. Suddenly my alarm bell rang, my phone alarm rang, and I got up. So when I got up, I could relate myself. That was the dreamer world that this whole sequence of actions were going on. When I woke up, I am a waker. Will I bother to go back and correct or to continue the operation that I have done, or to attach to that and try to do the operation that I have done, or go back to that sequence and try to, or feel bad about why I left it in the middle and came? Once you relate yourself correctly as a waker, you will disassociate yourself as a dreamer. You are totally aware, oh, that is my dream. That is not real. That has nothing to do with what I am going to do now. So when you disassociate yourself correctly from the dreamer state, whatever you had in your dream is not going to create any kind of restlessness in you when you have waked up. The same kind of identity is what the self-realized persons maintain with them and the external world. They identify what is real, what is not real, And that's the reason they are able to have their inner states of personality in such a way. But we dream and waking state, we very well understand because we experience the dream waking state clearly. But when it comes to the reality of the true nature of us, we have not gone through a lot of experience. Now we have started listening and understanding. That's why it's very difficult for us to relate to this point. But it is the same point that you can apply there. Once your ignorance, or when you strike the right relationship with the waker and the dreamer, with what is real and what is unreal, you will be very clear of what you expect and what not to expect. So this is just a small example again from the Hamlet by William Shakespeare. So this is a play that was played by Laurence Olivier in Hamlet, and that story is like a tragedy. Most of these stories are tragic stories where his father will be killed by his own uncle, and the uncle marries his mother, and he
ஆதி ஸ்பூன் இருந்தது 2 பேரும் பாலுக்கு 2 ஸ்பூன் போட்டுன்னு சாப்பிட்டோம்.
So he comes to the acting, and there he acts in a very tragic way, whether to kill his uncle or not, and that statement comes to be or not to be. But Laurence Olivier is just an actor in that play. He is not real person who has undergone that. So once he comes out of the stage, he will not be disturbed by any sequence of acting that he has done on the stage, because he knows the relationship between him as a person of Laurence Olivier and Laurence Olivier going and playing the role of in the Hamlet. That's why he is not getting disturbed by whatever kind of role he plays on stage. The same way, when we try to understand and associate ourselves correctly, we will not be getting into the mental restlessness. Yeah, this is again very how to say, the theory which needs a lot of experience to arrive at this. But trying to understand this and reflect upon this, then you try to do what you feel like doing to experience it. So everyone will have a different ways of experiencing things. So acceptance comes only when you experience and feel it yourself. Most of the things even I cannot explain, because that experience makes you realize things. That is the truth. It's not like I can experience what I felt at any point of time through my spiritual journey. Everything is different, and every person will have a different journey on their own. So you learn all this as a wisdom points, and with this knowledge you try to reflect upon them and feel what you can apply and see what experience you get, and that experience will make you realize. So coming to the 19th verse, tasmadasaktas satatam karyam karma samachara asakto hyacharan karma paramapnoti purushah. Again, coming back, tasmat is conclusion. So we have seen this Bhagavad Gita as a statement that comes with a kind of logic. He interprets something, and finally at a batch by batch, at every particular segments, he concludes with the final statements, the cause and effect relationships. So now he is concluding, tasmat, he is concluding. So what he is saying? Asakta satatam, so without attachment. Always perform actions which should be done. For by performing action without attachment, man reaches the supreme. Again, attachment, understand its attachment for the results of the action. So he's concluding. So Arjuna, you perform your actions without being attached to the results of the action. So when you perform it in that way, not only you, anyone. He says it's not just to Arjuna that he is saying here. He is saying everyone. Paramapnoti purushaha. Any person who does this will attain the Paramatma. So it's a general statement, a universal cause and effect that he is saying, universally applicable to anyone, irregardless. He doesn't put any conditions as this person, that person, this girl, that boy. So everyone who works without attachment to the actions, for all the actions that they are doing, the person attains the supreme. So this one, as I explained earlier, all the world is a stage and all the men and women are merely players. It's the quote from the Shakespeare, As You Like It. The same thing, when we understand the association of ourselves to the world in the right way, if you strike the right kind of relationship, you will understand or experience things in a different way. So do what you ought to do. No suffixes and prefixes. We have seen in the first few verses that if it is your duty, you are supposed to do it. There is nothing like, I like this to do, I don't like that to do. If it is your duty, if it falls, if that action falls under the category of things that you have to do, ought to do, there should be no suffixes and prefixes. You have to go ahead and do it and never be bothered by the affairs of the stage. So whatever results come, take every action as every result as an experience. If it is good, enjoy it. If it is not something that you were expecting, learn from it. Just try to surrender for whatever things have happened and glide through. The moment you try to resist, there is nothing that you are going to gain out of the resistance, because we have to flow through the currents of life. By resisting, we are putting a stress on ourselves. So resistance should not be there, but acceptance, it doesn't mean a blind acceptance again. When you accept it. If there are mistakes from your side, learn from it. It is like practically learn from your experiences. Take every action's results as an experience. Every action as an experience. Either you learn from it, you gain from it, lose from it, learn from it, but take that as an experience. Again, when we say that, most of them might think like, because we are not supposed to be attached to the results of the actions, and we always have to surrender and accept. So don't take any effort. We can always surrender and accept and just proceed ahead in our life without any mental agitations. But that is not the call that we have to do. We have to act for all the duties that we are supposed to do. But even at the time of acting, we have to have the right mental states and the right attitude towards work. And universally, all the other laws you follow, but everything happens only with the law of action. Inside, I am always thinking positive, everything is fine. But if you don't take an action, if you don't act the way you were supposed to act, you will not get the results, even though all the other parameters are satisfied. So any questions until here? Any questions? Because we are entering into the next segment. So if you have any questions or sharings in this segment, you can do, and I will continue with the next segment.
Abhita, I just have a small doubt with regard to tamasic and rajasic qualities, which you had shared in the previous slide. So you had shared about the tamasic and the rajasic thing, like where you have to do, where they are addicted to actions, and one is, I think they
laziness.
Don't do laziness. Yeah. So what is that if you're doing your duty, but you're doing your work is continuously, that also comes under rajasic then?
Yeah, any work we act, see, anytime you are acting, that means you are in the rajasic mode.
But then what is the sattva then here?
Sattva is to have, see, you act physically, right? Sattva is detachment to the results of action. So when you act, you are rajasic, like you are acting, you are active person physically. But mental state, when you are acting, is to disassociate or detach from the results of action. So when you detach from your results of action, your mind becomes in a sattvic state, because you are not bothered by the results of your actions.
But that you will know only when the results come, right? Like, for example, for a sports person, they are playing, say tennis, they are playing. So they are involved in the activity, right? So they're not lazy. They're not in the, definitely not in the tamasic. So between sattvic and rajasic, where does the sports person stand? Because winning or losing, you will know only in the end of the game, right? Only the end of the game you will know.
A very good.
After that,
Yeah, very good example. You see a lot of tennis now. Australian Open is going. You see a lot of players, right? Who, when you see the difference between the players who are result oriented and the players who are not result oriented, the temperaments, people who are sattvic, in the sense they are very calm and composed. They are not, when you are result oriented, when you lose one point, your mind becomes restless, and it is shown in the way you react to the next shots. But some people you see are very calm and composed till then. Even they lose, it doesn't matter. But they have that calmness and composure till the end of the match.
But isn't are they not called, like it's their style of playing? For example, if we take Dhoni and Virat Kohli, Kohli is very aggressive on the field, like he gets angry and stuff like that. But he's also very good in his game. Whereas Dhoni, if you see as much as a temperament person, maybe he's calmer. But then does not mean that they're rajasic, right? That's one thing where
they are rajasic. See, they are rajasic. We are not comparing whether rajas is good or sattva is good. But when you act with a sattvic mind state, your efficiency increases, because any negative emotion that comes in reduces your efficiency at that point of time. You cannot think better at that point of time.
Okay. Does sattvic mean that you don't have any emotions at all? Does it mean
No. You regulate your emotions. You have emotions, but see, when you're playing, when you took an example of a match. So suppose Kohli is playing on the field in the pitch. If he is sattvic, he hits a bad ball or he doesn't hit, he doesn't mind. He holds that composure and plays. He does his best at every time. But what happens when you become aggressive? You cannot do your best at that point of time.
Okay. Isn't it related? That is my confusion, because they say that that's how he performs best, and that's his style, right? Everybody has their own style of.
Yes, a little bit. Science says that when you take, particularly in sports, a little bit of adrenaline is good. Adrenaline is the stress hormone that is produced. Adrenaline produces the stress hormone. A little bit is good to give you a kind of spike to push yourself. Being a sports person, even we all look for that adrenaline rush. But if it becomes too much, it becomes negative.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So when we are talking,
my confusion comes there. The thing is, like, if you're going to be very calm, you're not going to get motivated to do further, right? Like, for example,
no, it's not like that. When you are calm, when you are playing, you focus better. Focus comes when your mind is calm. See, mind is the base for your focus and concentration. When you are emotionally having some kind of ups and downs, when your base is shaky, you cannot focus. It could be the style. It could be the style of people. I don't deny it. Some people perform better with a little stress. That's why a little stress is good for health, is what even scientifically it is proven. A little stress.
Right.
Not on a negative zone. But when we are talking here about sattva, this stress again should not become too much that it causes mental agitation. Rajasic is a mental restlessness state. You do, but you are always restless in mind. Sattvic is a state of calmness and peace where you will be able to give 100% focus and attention on things. And the mind is calm is only when you are able to focus. And the mind is not calm, you cannot focus.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Abhita.
Got it now?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. So any other questions or sharings? Okay, we will continue with the part 3. Here, I think 5 verses Lord Krishna talks from verse 20 to 24. Till now, our patient Arjuna, he gave a lot of intellectual speech saying about action, how is it insignia for life, what is the wheel of action, everything. As a doctor, we know Krishna always observes the way Arjuna is responding at every point of time. Till this time, how we know that Arjuna did not respond, or how he did not ask any question in the middle. So we understood that. So Krishna understands that, okay, He wanted an answer. He asked me to tell me what is, he only asked, tell me what I have to do now. So he started giving this intellectual logics and finally an intellectual conclusion that Arjuna, don't be attached to the results of action. If you're not attached to the results of action, you will attain the supreme. He doesn't see any kind of response from Arjuna as such. He shifts his intellectual speech to an emotional appeal, intellectual logic to an emotional appeal, to see if emotions will trigger some kind of response in Arjuna. So he shifts. Even in second chapter, we saw when he talks about total Sankhya philosophy, there was no reaction. But when he shifted from philosophy to practicality, he at least started to come out from his emotional state to a thought process state, where at least he started to ask some questions about Sita Prajna, who is he, how is he, and all. So when it comes to third chapter, we saw that he asks a perfect question which is relevant to himself. He asked, tell me what I have to do. He didn't ask about any other person. How will that person be, or how will this person be? He started asking the right question. Tell me now, you confused me with all your speeches, but now tell me what is that I have to do. So he started telling in this nearly 20 verses. Krishna has explained about action, what is it, and many things that we learned, and finally ended with a conclusion about not being attached to the results of action. And here comes the intellectual emotional appeal for the action. Karmana iva hi samsiddhim astita janakadayah lokasangrahame vapi sampashyan kartumarhasi. So he is saying, verily by the action alone, Janaka and others attain perfection. Even with an eye to the welfare of the world, also you should perform action. So till now, when he was talking about self-realized person, he was talking about in general, but now he brings about a person or the King Janaka. If you all know from the mythology, Janaka is also a king who is said to be liberated, or who is a self-realized person, but he is not a sannyasi. He is a king. Being a king, he attained self-realization. So being a king means he was not just sitting, he was doing what his duty was. He was ruling his kingdom. By doing his actions, he attained that perfection, which is the perfection of a self-realized person. So he is trying to tell, even with the welfare to the world, means by performing actions also, you can get liberated. So why did Lord Krishna took a new stance of emotional appeal? Because Arjuna did not show any signs of recovery from the state of inaction into which he had fallen. He wants to try if emotional appeal would help to revive Arjuna from his mental debacle. So great masters who followed Karma Yoga to realize the God, there are few of them, and among all of them, King Janaka is one of the great person. And why particularly, when there are a lot of people, why he took Janaka? One more thing is, when I tell about a person whom you know particularly, for example, you are looking for a kind of guidance regarding some person. I come and tell about a person whom you don't know at all. But if I come and tell about a person whom you know, you will be able to relate to that person in a better way. For example, you are looking for a kind of health benefit, or you're having a health issue and you're looking for a solution for that health issue. So if I come and tell you that there was one person whom you don't know and tell about them, you will not relate much. But if I tell about some person in your friend circle who has gone to a treatment at some place and got better, because you know the background of that person, and for instance, that person also had a similar kind of issue as you are having, then you will relate very much with that person and think that, okay, he has the same problem. Okay, he went to there or she went there, the solution worked out, and your emotional connect will be a bit better in terms of understanding. That is the only reason Krishna, again, logical. Here also the logic. Why Janaka was picked up? Because Arjuna knows Janaka very well, and King Janaka is greatly respected even by the Pandavas, and he looks to him as a great person. That's why he brought Janaka into the picture and started telling him that the persons who are like Janaka. Janakadaya means he told Janaka and others, they all got liberated or attained perfection being in Karma Yoga, like by doing the actions. So you can also achieve it by doing your duties. So persuasion is used here as second psychological tactic. He's persuading him. It's being used as a means to engage Arjuna into action. Yadyadacharati shreshtaha tattadevetaro kudanu vartate. So he's saying, whatsoever the superior person does, that alone other people do. Whatever standard he sets, that the world follows. So here again, it is like a kind of emotional blackmailing that Krishna is doing to Arjuna. He's saying that Shreshtaha is leader. So generally we know if there is a leader, everyone follows the leader. We look forward to emulate the qualities of the leader. We look forward to what the leader is doing and we want to emulate them. So the people who are under a leader follows the leader, and if the leader doesn't act properly, then the person will not act properly, and whatever standard you are setting to the world will be different. So whatever a standard the leader sets, the world follows the same kind of standards. This is a psychological truth. Whatever a leader does, the mass follows. Whatever standards he sets, his followers emulate them. So mass psychology applies to all facets of life. It's not just to one facet of corporate world or anywhere. It could be in a family with a parent and child. It could be with teacher and a student. It could be with a preacher and people who are being preached with. For everyone, this psychology applies. That people follow. That's why many times when it comes to the parenting styles, they say that you better be the thing that you want your child to follow. So when you practice what the child wants to follow, the child will automatically follow. There is no need for you to specifically teach the theory. The same thing. So if you are walking a certain kind of life, there is a chance, more chances that your kids also take that from you and follow even without preaching. So law of emulation functions for positive as well as negative. It's not just for positives, even for negatives. So action speaks louder than words. So now Arjuna is trying to get the message. So Arjuna here is a leader. He knows very well that he is chairing the Pandavas army. And if he runs out of the battle, people will also start running away without fighting, because they say Arjuna itself did not fight. Why should we fight? So now he gets the point. Okay, if he doesn't act the right way, he will be a wrong example to all the soldiers who are following him. Now he has to think to act. So he brought him in a state where Arjuna is compelled to think now by saying this statement, Yadyada charati shreshtaha tatta devettaro naraha. So whatever a leader does, the masses follow. This statement now is like a punch to Arjuna. He will start thinking. In emphasizing his influence and importance, his vanity is being fed. And again, he knows that he's very proud. He likes to praises. He doesn't like to be disrespected. He doesn't like infamy. So for such a person, if you are brought into such a stage, he will certainly think, oh, it will be infamy for me if I don't do this. If I am not a good example, because he is such a kind of emotional person, he again brought the stance here. So this is a Chinese proverb, not the cry, but the flight of a wild duck leads the flock to fly and follow. It's like actually that the leader is the one who actually helps the masses to follow. People will follow a leader to whatever attainment his leadership will take him. Failure to attain a given standards or objective as a rule lies with the leader and not with the people. So we will continue with the rest of the 3 verses in the next class. Any questions in this 2 verses? Understand the psychological shift, why he has moved from intellectual logic to emotional logic, because there was no response. So every time when we also talk to people, when we also try to persuade people, this happens many times in our lives as well. This doesn't mean that this has to be applied in professional life. Even in our daily conversations, if you are trying to tell something to the other person and the other person is not showing any kind of response or any kind of reaction to what we are trying to say, then you always logically think what kind of person the other person is. Is the person driven by emotions? Is the person a intellectual person, or is the person more looking for facts? And depending upon that person, you have to change your way of talking. And that is also one of the techniques, or what kind of techniques needs to be used at what states of mind. When we say states of mind, the states of mind is what defines the personality of a person. So if a person is very emotionally talking to them will totally make them listen to what you want. But if a person is very intellectual, your emotional talks will not help much, because that person looks for more logic, which is appealing to the intellect. He's a very practical person. So your emotions will not work there. So you have to look ways to talk intellectually.